We're sitting on a time bomb right now. America is going deeper and deeper and deeper into debt, and it scares me.
I'm looking at a Daily Mail article here. Financial guru who predicted crash of 2008 issues devastating take on U.S. economy. Why is it that now people are waking up to your message, would you say?
You don't have to be an economist to know you're getting screwed. Everybody knows something's wrong. Every time you print fake money, the rich get richer, but the poor middle class get poorer. But our schools don't teach this stuff. That's the problem.
You said this to me once. The difference between a rich person and a poor person is their relationship with fear. That's heavy.
We have 4 intelligences: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. But for most people, when it comes to money, it's all fear-based thinking. Fear stops most people from going for their dreams, and it limits them. What if I make a mistake? What if I do this? My rich dad just taught me make a mistake and learn from it. But many people make no mistakes and learn nothing. And there's a lot of those today.
Are you just still out there trying to educate the masses? You seems like you're going to every single continent. Why are you still doing it?
I believe we all have a calling. There's many ways you can make money, but how do I best serve my fellow human being or my country? That's why I went to Vietnam, although I didn't have to go. We're forgetting the essence of service versus money. So I go and teach as long as somebody wants me to teach.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. You probably know that we've just recently been re-platformed on YouTube after 25 months completely in the dark. The truth is, I really need your help. What I really need you to do is click on that subscribe button right now, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment or share the link with friends. We're really fighting against an algorithm that's tried to keep us quiet for so long. And the more subscribers we have, the more people watch our content, the better guests we can bring you, the better content, and we can continue transforming lives. We've been doing this for 14 years now. I want to do this for another 14 years, but I really need your help. So click on that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, share this, and we're going to continue to bring you more and more great content. Thank you. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Robert Kiyosaki, the entrepreneur, investor, financial expert, and author of the globally renowned bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the #1 personal finance book of all time. I love saying that. Robert, you have dedicated your life to challenging the way tens of millions of people around the world think about money and investing. You've written over 30 books, including one with President Donald Trump. You've sold more than 40 million copies of your books worldwide and built a global movement dedicated to helping people protect their wealth. In your book, Rich Dad's Prophecy, you warned that the biggest financial crash in history was on its way. You now believe that crash has begun, that hyperinflation is here, and that millions of people are about to be wiped out financially. You have said there's still time to prepare and urge people to move out of stocks, bonds, and fiat currency and into real assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. You believe gold could reach $30,000 an ounce and Bitcoin could go to $1 million in the next 10 years. You've warned that the Fed and the Treasury are running a criminal enterprise by printing worthless money to cover up a collapsing system. Your message is simple, Robert. Get educated, get real assets, and get out of the system before it's too late. Robert, welcome back to London Real.
Brian, how many years have we been talking about this? I mean, 30-something years now.
Yeah,
And
some
here.
years.
It's here.
Yeah, you have been the OG of predicting this, and you've been talking about this stuff on London Real for 10 years on top of that. You know, I'm looking at a Daily Mail article here that's watched by tens of millions of people around the world, maybe more, hundreds. And it says financial guru who predicted crash of 2008 issues devastating take on U.S. economy. And of course, they're talking about you. Robert, you're getting tons of global traction lately. Why is it that now people are waking up to your message, would you say?
Well, I think was Jim Rickards who said, you don't have to be an economist to know you're getting screwed. Something along those lines. If you don't have to go to, Harvard for an MBA in economics, you know something's wrong. Everybody knows something's wrong. And the thing that's terrifying to me, not terrifying, but disheartening, is the gap between rich and poor. That was our greatest fear of. And as you and I know, every time you print this fake money, the rich get richer, but the poor middle class get poorer. And because when you print fake money, assets go up. But when you print fake money, chicken, eggs, and milk go up.
Yeah.
And so the middle class is getting wiped out. Unemployment's climbing. And I'm getting richer. You're getting richer. And I'd rather have everybody get richer. But our schools don't teach this stuff. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, I think people are starting to feel that something's going on out there, like you said. And you referenced our good friend Jim Rickards. I still remember the time we spent together in Phoenix, I think back in 2017, where you and I also recorded that epic interview that went viral. And yeah, Jim says it so well, and you say it so well. You know, I saw an article in the FT today, Robert, that said the prices of gold in Iran are like 80% higher than the rest of the world because they're in this closed system. And even the people there realize their own cash is trash and they're pushing gold up even higher than the spot levels elsewhere. It looks like everybody's starting to realize what you've been talking about for decades.
Right. And then this, there's been so many books, and this, I've been a student of this. This is The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah.
It's about the Federal Reserve Bank. And there was a line that I think President Jefferson said, if a central bank takes over America, children will wake up homeless in the land their fathers captured. And so homelessness is spreading all across the world, as you know. And it's pretty disturbing to me personally. I've been homeless for about 2 weeks. I didn't enjoy it, but it was in San Diego, so it wasn't so bad. My wife and I lived in our car for about 2 weeks till we found something we could live in. But this affordability, as you know, is wiping people out left and right. They lose their jobs. They can't recover. So it's tragic. It's a tragedy.
You know, it's interesting, Robert, that the public just seems to be much more aware of what's going on. And maybe it's because of what Elon Musk was doing with Doge and the fact that Trump talks about this publicly, or the fact that we keep getting repeated back these trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. It just seems like the public's much more aware of kind of what's going on, and they seem to linking it back to their own savings. And I don't know, it just feels like we're on the edge of a real kind of revolution in that sense. Are you feeling that too?
Yes, and I'm going to give credit to the younger generation because they're more, tech savvy, and they're the ones who got into Bitcoin early. And they got into Bitcoin early because, my generation, the boomer generation, is sound asleep at the wheel. But the younger generation knows what's going on. That's why Bitcoin took off. And so they're aware that, like think about this. Our interest payment on our $36 trillion is greater than the income we collect from taxes. I'll say it again. The interest payments on our $36 trillion is greater than the income we collect from taxes. So America is going deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. And as you know, being in your field, derivatives are even a bigger problem. I think derivatives are a quadrillion dollar problem. And we're sitting on a time bomb right now. And it scares me. I mean, I feel for the people not prepared for it.
Obviously, the Trump administration with Doge and a bunch of things, and, Howard Lutnick have really talked about trying to get this under control. But it's really hard for any government to ever get fiat spending under control, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I mean, the history of humanity, Robert, is that ultimately we don't have the discipline, and we ultimately find our bankers printing money until the system collapses. So is there even anything that Trump can do about this, or is it just bigger? Is it the flawed fiat system itself?
Well, as you know, the off-balance sheet debt, when you take Social Security, Medicare in America, pensions and all this, it's 250 trillion. And then when you look at the last war we fought, in the World War II, Germany's in trouble, Japan's in trouble, America's in trouble. So the whole world's in trouble, and China is in serious trouble. So this is, I'm afraid they're just going to print more money. That's not going to solve the problem, just make it worse. But like every time they print this stuff, like I say, guys with assets get richer. Like if you have gold and you print this, gold goes up. But if you're trying to buy a carton of eggs go up too.
Yeah.
And then people can't eat.
Yeah.
So it goes up. It's a tragedy.
So the U.S. is printing, the Eurozone is printing, China's printing, everyone's going to print. And so if someone's listening to us right now and wants to get out of the matrix, Robert, what's the best thing they can do? How can they start?
Well, that's why I've always recommended go to gold and silver, and there's Bitcoin, but there's also commodities like oil. I invest in oil wells. I was an oil man before. And, I took this gold mine public. It's a Trixie mine in Utah.
Oh yeah. I remember you told me about that. Yeah. Amazing.
And so the best solution is preparation. But for people today, if you've lost your job and you can't afford to eat, you can't put a roof over your head, it's hard to say save gold, silver, Bitcoin. It's a little late. So I'm extremely concerned. But you and I have been talking about this for 30 years now, and some people took action, some people didn't.
Robert, should people try to hold their politicians accountable? We've seen people criticizing this kind of big, beautiful bill and saying there's still too much spending in there. We're still going to go down a bad path. Obviously, when Biden was in, he just kept printing at post-COVID levels. It's just this unimaginable amount of money that they were spending for God knows what. Is it worth people trying to rein in the politicians as a temporary fix?
I don't think it's fixable.
Yeah.
I hate to be so pessimistic, and I don't see how you can fix $36 trillion of debt. $1 trillion, if you spend $1 a minute, how long would it take you to spend $36 trillion? It would take you 32,666 years to spend $1 trillion. And they print it in a second. They keep printing money to pay our bills. You think about that, you go, I think you should stop printing your money, but they can't now. Do you know what I mean? They just can't.
Yeah. It's almost like a drug. And I remember one of your books that you said, for the average individual, a paycheck is like a drug, because you get so used to being fed kind of by the system, and you don't have to be creative. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't actually create your wealth. And you get so used to someone paying that paycheck. It's like one step different than getting a welfare check, but it's still something you just get really conditioned to without having to create that wealth. You've always talked about entrepreneurship and creating value. And that's something you've been talking about for 30 years.
Yeah. Is that, don't need a job, basically.
Yeah.
An entrepreneur.
And that's something your rich dad drilled into you in what would look like a very cruel way. By the way, I tell everyone I meet, Robert, and by the way, people around the world love you. And I talk to people everywhere. I was in Dubai, I was in Toronto recently, and whenever I bring your name up, everybody just, their eyes, they just glaze over and just love. And I always tell them, go back and reread Rich Dad Poor Dad. The first 20 pages will blow your mind. You think you know that book, reread it. And I just still remember how your rich dad, in a forceful way, forced you to find a way to get creative and create your wealth. And in a way where you were just almost getting frustrated because you grew up in this system where nobody had to do that. Everybody got a check.
There's another book out I'm endorsing. It's called The Big Print by Lawrence Lepard.
Okay.
I highly recommend this book because it's not that it does anybody any good, but it explains how he got into this mess here. And he talks about the bankers, the city of London and Wall Street and the big bailout. They bail out the rich, which was criminal, at the expense of the poor and middle class. So our value system is corrupt at the core. At the core, when we screw our people to protect the rich. And our school systems, as you know, I love this guy here, the Donald, my book with him, Midas Touch.
Yeah, amazing.
Going after Harvard University, I went, yes, Donald, go get him. He's shutting down the Department of Education. Yes, Donald, go get him. So
now, how do you feel? How do you feel about that, Robert? Because your poor dad was high level in the education system in Hawaii, and you've always had a beef with teachers' unions and people in higher education. Tell me why you always had that beef, and tell me what you think of what Donald's doing. By the way, did you ever think he would be able to take such big actions so fast against such a high level institution as Harvard?
He's got guts, and like people hate him. But I say, could you imagine if Kamala won?
Oh my God.
Well, that looked like, oh my God, So what I say to people, history will judge his actions today, not you or I. History would be the judge. And I give him a lot of credit. I have a picture of him with his patch on his ear. And the day before he had been shot, and he never watching TV in Milwaukee, at the Republican National Convention. And he and I were talking because I flew these little helicopters in Vietnam. There it goes.
Yeah.
And we got shot at all the time. And it's an interesting sound. It goes zip, zip. And Brian, that zip had been just a little bit more this way, you'd be dead. And Trump was sitting there with his patch on his ear. How he's alive is beyond me. So we're talking about what it's like to have this zip go past you. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And people were coming up to him and says, Donald, you're the Messiah. You've been saved. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm glad he's alive.
Me too. It's still hard to believe he's still alive. It's just, and it's hard to even imagine what the world would look like if he wasn't, I can't imagine it, Robert. I don't know if I ever told you, but I got down on my knees and prayed the night before the election. I don't think I've ever done that in my entire life. There I was in my place in London on my knees praying for his victory. And I don't know what that says. I just knew it was such an important time, Robert, that I couldn't imagine that future without him.
I agree 100%. And then there was the Biden crime family. But a lot of people point back to Obama, which was the start of it. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I do my best to stay neutral. But it does seem like the Democrats have been one big crime family. So anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of those allegations coming out. I'm sure we're going to know more Just wanted to finish up with Harvard. Why is Donald going after these institutions of education? You yourself were censored by some universities in Arizona when you tried to give a talk. We saw so many instances of all the wokeism and all the things going on. Why is it important that Donald's making a stand there?
Well, if you read the Communist Manifesto by Marx, in there, he spelled it all out. And what happened was, what Marx predicted was that communism will infiltrate America through the education system. So in 1930, Columbia University, which is an Ivy League school, sent away to Germany, Berlin, and they sent over Marxist professors to teach at Columbia University's College of Education, Teachers College.
How do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside I view is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the Investment Club.
And that was in 1930. Then you and I remember what happened in the 60s. There was Kent State and all this was the rioting on campuses. So Marxism came in through our school system. I was teaching at Arizona State University, which is one of the biggest schools in America. And the woke professors came after me because I was teaching capitalism.
Wow.
They came after me. I went, wow.
Wow.
So it's our institutions of higher education. So when Donald takes them on, man, I feel he's got so, Mexicans say cojones, big ones. He has got he does not take any BS. And I wrote 2 books with him. He is a great man. His sons are great people as compared to Hunter Biden.
Yeah. I know you know Don and Eric, and you've been hunting with them. You've known them for a long time, and you've always said great things about them. We'll definitely see them coming into their own. When I was in Toronto at the Consensus Conference, I saw Eric speak, and they're both very good, and they're both very big into crypto and DeFi. And it's interesting. They get questioned about it a lot because they're getting accused that the pro-crypto legislation by the government is in their interests. But they come out and say, look, the reason we love crypto is because we got debanked in 2020 because of our views and our politics and who our dad was. This is by necessity. This isn't, because we all of a sudden wanted to change our business model. As they said, they used to be able to pick up the phone and get a loan from any bank in the world because they were the Trumps. And then the next day they couldn't get a loan from anyone. And so, yeah, it's great to see that family really pushing forward. And, we're big into crypto here, and it's just so refreshing to see that family out there speaking intelligent about the blockchain and in assets like Bitcoin, which we all know is going to help everybody through what you're calling a greater depression, which is upon us.
Well, this book here, The Big Print, I highly recommend the opening pages, your blood boils. He talks about Larry Summers and Geithner and all these characters, and how they basically screwed the entire American public to bail out their friends. There's something morally rotten. And so the big print is getting at the big print hasn't come yet. So that's why yesterday I was out buying more silver, If silver's about $35, and I think next stop is 50. At least I'm hoping it is. But when they print money, assets go up, but so does chicken, milk, and eggs goes up, inflation. And that's why it's wiping out a poor middle class the more they print this stuff. but they don't tell you that in school. It's tragic.
What do you think this one's going to look like, Robert? You've coined it a greater depression as opposed to the Great Depression, and you've talked about what you see out there, which is record high credit card debt, 1.2 trillion. You've talked about obviously the rising national debt, 36 trillion. You talked about increasing unemployment rates, declining 401k balances. How bad is this one going to get?
Well, I've had the benefit, Brian, of this here is a Zimbabwe note. It's $10 million. And this here's a book by the guy, Philip Haslam, When Money Destroys Nations. So guess where I was when Zimbabwe crashed? I was in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Brian, it was terrifying. It was terrifying.
What's it like? Is it just chaos?
It's panic. They don't know what's real. Nobody would do this stuff. And the economy is crashing. And I was sitting in a truck. I'm a hunter, in Africa. And they call them the war vets, with these black guys with AK-47s pull up. And they point the guns at me. I'm going, holy mackerel. I didn't die in Vietnam. I'm going to die out here in Zimbabwe, But what they did, Brian, was they went to the white farmers and they took their farm. And this was, I was there, I'm watching it going, why? I'm not really religious, but why does God want me to see this? Why am I here watching this? And they point these guns at me and all this. I'm going, wow. All you can do is put your hands up, going, I'm not going to resist. And then so this little white woman comes running out and they're hauling her off in the car. And she turns to my professional hunter and me, the white guy too. She says, burn this place down. Gentlemen, burn it down. So Brian, we got torches and they had all these grass shacks and the farmhouse and then the tractor yard and the diesel fuel. We torched the whole thing. It was blowing up. I thought I was back in Vietnam again.
Wow.
Just blowing up, fires going everywhere, and we're hauling our butts out of there. But she just said, burn this place down. I don't want to have anything. But I saw it. I'm going, wow. So why did I see that? Why was I seeing Mr. Trump the day after he gets shot? I'm going, why am I seeing this? So, how do I meet you 30 years ago? We keep talking about the same thing, but now it's here.
I think that was a small glimpse into what could be coming to the Western nations like America, Europe, etc.
It's already here. When I see the homelessness, it's like Jefferson said it,
Yeah.
When we have a central bank, homelessness will spread. How he was so, prescient. This is Thomas Jefferson.
I heard that quote recently, Robert. And yeah, he said, when you allow the bankers to have control, then sooner or later, you're going to lose your homes, you're going to lose your this, you're going to lose everything. And this was something he said, yeah. And it sounds like a quote that came from someone 10 years ago, but it was 250 years ago. Yeah.
Nobody learned.
The homelessness is something, that it's just, I know in America and other places, people just grown accustomed to it. But if you come from a Dubai where there's zero, because it's illegal, and then you go to America, it's something you notice right away. And it's kind of shocking, but then you grow accustomed to it if you've been there for a long time, as if it's normal. But it wasn't normal 30, 40, 50 years ago, was it?
I look at San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities in America. And then people don't go there anymore because this human feces all over the place. What happened? And I think what this guy is here, Lepard is saying here, is when you have bad money, when you have fake money come into a system. That's Gresham's law. Do you know what I mean? When bad money enters the system, good money goes into hiding. So for years, United saying buy gold, silver, Bitcoin. This is my gold mine here. So I'm getting rich. I own oil wells. I own cattle. I own commodities, things like this. But I stay away from paper. I just don't trust them.
Robert, for the average person out there, I know you said if someone's really struggling, it's hard to set aside anything to buy an asset. But if someone was, and probably it'd be a great education for them, even if they spent $20 a month or $50 a month just to start changing their mentality. What should they buy? I know when you came out with your original board game, which is behind you, Cash Flow, by the way, for everybody out there, you should get this board game. They also have one for kids that I play with my kids here in London. And I'm starting to, train their brains the correct way to understand assets and liabilities. It's amazing. But in the original days, you were talking about owning real estate. Now you're talking about owning gold. You just mentioned that you think silver is one of the best opportunities right now because you think it's still relatively low to where it should be. And then, of course, you've been talking about buying Bitcoin and then even Ethereum in the past because you like those as assets. Where do you think people should start on that spectrum? Because it's hard for some people to own real estate with tiny amounts of money, right?
Brian, I get into fights because I have one friend with 4 daughters. And I said, have you read my book? He goes, no. I said, who's teaching your kids about money? School.
Oh.
He doesn't care, Brian. He's an intelligent guy. He's very smart. But he has kind of a block against money. So that I tried to give him a Communist Manifesto, which I had to read at 19. I read the Communist Manifesto. And, it says graduated income tax is essential for the spread of communism, abolition of private property. I mean, what else can you have? Oh, workers of the world unite, labor unions, everything my poor dad loved. Marx endorsed. So it was tough. I was 19 years old and went to school in New York. And then I realized my family are Marxists. Not that they're bad people. Economics is like a religion. Like, there's Jews, Christianity, Buddhism, and all this. So Marxism is an economic religion, same as capitalism is. But as you and I know, in Northern Ireland, you had Catholics shooting Protestants, which made no sense to me at all. I thought we're all on the same side. No, they're Catholics. Oh, they're Christian. They're Protestants. What is wrong with people? I was dating a girl in New York, and the side of her car was IRA, Irish Republican Army. I'm going, I said, how can you hate Catholics? No, they do. Do you know what I mean? I just don't understand people, I'm saying.
And so Marxism versus capitalism, it's sometimes just as vehement and violent as religion versus religion. And people kind of pick these mindsets. And then these days, it's Trump, anti-Trump with the derangement syndrome, right? Those are also lines that people divide. But they really don't know what they're signing up to. And then, of course, the universities, to bring it back to Harvard, they pump and promote these belief systems. I don't know why. Well, it's probably because they were infected via the manifesto, like you said. It's the way they control those student bodies. My daughter's in school in Boston, and, she's getting a special type of brainwashing there as well. And then we saw with the protests that basic human rights went out the window, when those Gaza protests happened. And even my alma mater, MIT, was hauled up in front of Congress. And I was embarrassed to see the president of MIT. This is a school with the greatest technical minds in the world. It is not a school where we should be having people feel uncomfortable because of their religions. And yet that's exactly what was happening, and they were violating basic human rights. So I'm so glad to see Trump attacking that. But I think it all comes down to, like you said, that Communist Manifesto, which said it'll happen through the university systems. And it did, right?
Yep. 4 dead in Ohio was Kent State. And the National Guard shot students. They couldn't get much lower than that. And when I came back from Vietnam, I got spit on, hit with rotten eggs, and called baby killer and all this. And I landed in just north of San Francisco at Norton Air Force Base, and we got off, and these hippies were out there from the Woodstock generation spitting on us, and geez. I make a joke of it because most of my friends are Republicans. I say, I swear to God, I saw Nancy Pelosi out there.
Yeah, Robert, I don't think we can imagine what that felt like. I actually saw this interview on YouTube a couple days ago of a Vietnam vet who came back and then ended up working as a police officer right at the Haight-Ashbury precinct. And he was talking about what it was like to be around those hippies. And man, it did not sound like a walk in the park, man. They had barbed wire fence up 15, 20 feet. It was like they were walking around with guns. And he said it was like I was in Nam trying to deal with these people. So I don't even think we understand how hard it was for you to come back from one war zone to another one where people weren't even acknowledging your service back then. So, yeah, I just want to thank you for your service, because having to deal with that is just hard to believe in a world now where at least most people know to thank people for their service, you know?
Well, that's why I commend you and me, because we fight back as teachers. You know, we're capitalists and we teach capitalism. And I think that's the way we fight back, because otherwise you have Marxists teaching our kids, you know, like they believe in taxation. And I keep saying to them, America was founded as a tax-free nation called the Boston Tea Party. Remember that?
Yeah.
You have to pay taxes. We're on as a tax-free nation. Marx says a graduated income tax is essential for the spread of communism. I mean, can't they just read that little book? You know, he's in 1930 when what's his name? Columbia University imported those Marxist teachers from Germany. So you look at what's happening right now. Germany, America, and Japan. We're fighting. And Germany is in trouble. Japan's in serious trouble. America's in serious trouble. China's in trouble. You know, Volkswagen just laid off, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people in Germany. And a big problem with Germany, I'm sure you've heard this, but was they went green. They didn't want to go nuclear, so they went green. And the cost of energy went so high in Germany, they can't afford to produce. So this green movement just keeps spreading its nasty tentacles all the way across the world. And it's all done in the name of DEI, you know, diversity, exclusivity, all that stuff. I say it should be DIE, die, or dying.
Yeah, it's just another mind virus they kind of use to control that has no base in reality. And Robert, here in the UK, it's just getting worse. You know, we've got a Labour government that are increasing the taxes on foreign nationals that were here. They all bugged out a couple months ago because the UK was trying to tax their assets overseas. So people that have lived here 20, 30 years, you know, wealthy people that invest, you know, entrepreneurs are leaving en masse. They're going to a place like Dubai where the taxes are zero, where they have all these upsides like safety. And, you know, I know a woman in Dubai who spends time there and here, and she says, you know, Brian, I wouldn't mind paying 30, 40% tax if I showed up to London and it was safe. There was a police force. There was healthcare. It was clean, but you don't even get that. And then you go to a place like Dubai with zero tax, and it is, I think, literally the safest city in the world. There is no graffiti. There's no homelessness. It's just there to actually help you be an entrepreneur. And I look at the UK and Europe, and I don't know how they're going to reverse it, you know. And the discussions here are crazy. There's a guy here who I think used to be a trader named Gary. He has a show called Gary's Economics, and he just keeps preaching that we got to tax the rich, and that's the only way to save the people here. And no one's taking any ownership. And it just feels like Marxism is back and alive, and the UK is running out of talent, and it's just gonna end poorly, Robert. I'm sure you see some of that from overseas, not to mention the fact that people get arrested for Facebook posts. So it's kind of sad days here.
No, and I was just in Japan. That was just tragic, you know, because they're hardworking, but they save money, and they save.
Right.
And when they should be investing, you know what I mean? They're savers. And then my first gold mine was in China, and I took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And as soon as we struck gold, the Chinese nationalized it.
Yeah.
So I found out what the word country risk means, you know. So you don't do business in countries that don't respect the rule of law, and that's China. I'm not thinking the Chinese people. But you've got to be more, I think, global, who respects the law, who doesn't. And this was the worst thing about it. It was when they took my gold mine in China, it was in Dalian, China. And the guys called me up, secretly, said, for $1 million, you'll get your mine back. And I thought about it, Brian, I thought about it because it was a big, big mine. But then I realized if I do that once, when does it end? When does the paying end,
Yeah.
I said, I'll just eat it now. Walked away.
Wow. Yeah, you've told me that story. I listen to a lot of Steve Bannon lately. He's got his War Room podcast, and Rickards goes on there sometimes. And I think people don't really understand Steve Bannon very well. But if you listen to him talk about China, it's fascinating the way that he characterizes it. Because he says there's not 1.3 billion communists in China. He said there's 1,000 gangsters in the CCP, and they don't even care about communism. They're gangsters, and they're the same guys that took away your mine and that run that country into the ground. But the people of China are probably more capitalistic than any place. Again, hardworking people, but it's all run by the gangsters at the top. And I never heard anyone articulate that like Bannon has. And I think he's on to something there.
Peter Thiel took $500,000 and turned it into $1 billion using the exact same techniques we're using inside the investment club. He met a CEO, his name was Zuckerberg. He pitched him the deal and he said, okay, I'll give you $500,000. Mark went public and sold the shares to people like you. Well, what happened to Peter? Well, he exited and got a 2,300x return. The wealthy invest in early stage companies, folks. The public markets are for suckers. It's a rigged game. By the way, this happens in crypto as well. It's called pre-sale tokens. This is Solana. Does anybody know this chain? They sold pre-sale tokens for 4 cents. And you can see the date on there, April 5th, 2018. Look at Solana today, folks. That thing's up over 1,000x. The media and Wall Street and all these hype people get you to buy the top. Meanwhile, they put their clients in at the bottom and they use you for liquidity to make their clients rich. You can play this same game. You just have to have the financial education and the deal flow. That's it.
This is the book Buckminster Fuller called The Grunch of Giants. And that's what this guy is saying too. We have gangsters in our banking system.
Yeah. Same thing, right? Yeah. Different.
They don't care. People, they really don't care. They don't care. Just that they get rich.
Robert, you mentioned that schools teach us to be poor. It's one of the your quotes that I quote all the time. Do you see us making any changes to that schooling institution right now? Obviously, Trump's going after Harvard. That's kind of high level. Do you think with the advent of AI or these personal tutors that maybe we can at some point start teaching our kids about money?
I think the social media is going to teach our kids. I mean, that's what I was saying. Many times I find the younger guys more savvy than the older guys in my generation.
Okay.
Because they're more tuned in to YouTube and things. Not that it's, but they get more up-to-date news. Not that all of it's good, but they're more tuned into social media than, Channel 9 or 10, stuff like that, or CBS. So it's really changing. The world's changing very, very quickly, and so is the younger kids. But as you know, like Japan's going to be out of people pretty soon too.
Yeah, tell me about Japan, because as you said, they're almost religious about their saving. And in Japan, having an idea outside of the norm is discouraged. So everybody kind of goes along. And I would argue, from what I've seen, they're probably the worst of the G7 when it comes to this just constantly saving without ever asking themselves why. The government buys all of their really low coupon bonds, and they're always in this state, the same state they've been in for 10 years, right? Massive debt, economy at a standstill. What did you see when you went there?
I think they entered a depression in 1990.
Wow.
And, the carry trade, they were printing all this money and people were borrowing in yen, buying dollars. And so the bond market is in serious. I was going to ask you about that because I see the biggest problem in the world today is the bond market, not the stock market, because the stock market's big, but in my opinion, the bond market's 10 times bigger and deeper.
Yeah.
And when the Chinese and Japanese and people start dumping our bonds to buy gold, what is that? What's that going to the U.S. dollar? What do you know about the bond market in as far as them dumping our U.S. bonds.
Yeah, well, everybody's watching that 10-year note and that 30-year note kind of creep up. It was kind of going one way when the original tariff negotiations happened, and everyone thought, they could refinance the 10-year note at 4%, but now it's going the other way, and people are very concerned about what's going on. So I think you're right, Robert. I think we really have to worry about what's going on with those bonds. Of course, everyone thinks that maybe, the stable coins in crypto could be a new buyer of those treasury assets, but that's probably only a temporary fix to the structural problem.
The problem, Brian, is what happens to the people. You and I are okay. And, you and I work for the people. It disturbs me. It really disturbs me. And then, it's the uninformed, or maybe they don't care. Or I got into it with this guy with 4 daughters, and he says, so what? I said, who's going to teach your daughters if you don't teach them? He says, school. I mean, I'm going. And he knows nothing. So if I had kids, I'd be.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below. Most people will never see this opportunity. Dubai luxury transformation projects have historically delivered 40 to 90% annual returns. That is incredible. These were once reserved only for insiders with access. I spent 15 years on Wall Street, and I learned this. The biggest returns always go to the people who get the call first. Now, you finally can. We've just received a brand new project with major upside potential. Allocations move fast. Click the link, apply now, and speak to my team. This is your chance to see what others never will.